Okay, it's time for the last Kinemon video. Although this is obviously not the last video I'll discuss him in, because he's going to get discussed in other videos for the Scabbards. And the next video I'm going to do in this series is going to be about Otsuru anyway. So we're going to talk about her in the next video. And that involves talking about Kinemon as well, because, you know, he's her husband. This last video for Kinemon is going to cover from the Battle of Onigashima, from when they arrive on Onigashima, basically up through present, up through what we've seen in the cover story, and what we've seen from the little bit in the Egghead arc where we saw him and Momonosuke is what we're gonna have. So when last we left them, Momonosuke had been captured by the traitor Kanjuro. Denjiro has revealed himself and brought his allies. The Straw Hats, along with the Scabbards, were all on their way to Onigashima, going through the Torii Gate, dealing with the guards real quick. All of them were headed through. When they get to Onigashima, all of the samurai and the Scabbards and such, they all destroy and burn the boats that are there, that they use to get to the island, basically as a way of, like, you know, this also prevents the beast pirates from kind of being able to take these boats and flee if something happens, but it's also this, like, dedication to, like, yeah, no, if we are stuck here, we are going to fight until the last man and do as much damage to Kaido's crew as possible. The only boats that don't get burned are obviously Luffy, Law's, and Kid's boats are the only ones that don't end up getting, you know, destroyed in the process, because they kind of need those for later. We're gonna need those later, and Law with the Polar Tang is actually kind of part of the plan that's going to happen here. There was a moment where Kinemon and a bunch of the Scabbards and Law were, like, in the Polar Tang kind of discussing what they were going to do, and now they have arrived at Onigashima, and we get to the point where it is time for them all to basically get into disguises. So what happens is Kinemon uses one of his, it's like a bargain sale technique or something like that, I think, I don't remember, that he uses in order to basically he uses this as a way to disguise everyone in, like, beast pirate appropriate attire, including himself and Denjiro and some of the other Scabbards, and a few of the other ones who are going to then use this way as, like, sneaking around the island. And then they're going to meet up at the back of the island with Law and the other Scabbards that are still on the Polar Tang, after Law, you know, room and shambles and puts them on the coast in the back, so that way they can lead groups through and then head into actually battle. And of course, you know, part of this, the fact that I love, is, like, Luffy and Kid just, like, head straight in and they start causing some chaos inside, which actually just kind of works to Kinemon and Law's benefit in this plan, because by this point in time, Law has figured out to just factor into his plan Luffy not paying attention and just going off on his own. Law's like, it's okay, I worked that into the plan, they're a distraction. So we have that. And then what ends up happening is Kinemon, and they split into three groups. Then Kinemon's group goes one way around the outside of Onigashima, around Kaido's mansion, and Denjiro leads the other group around the other side. And then a bunch of the minks are going to get on top of the dome as well, on top of the Skull Dome, because then they can fight outside, and then they can use the moonlight to their advantage when it becomes time. And so they're working their way around. They end up going around the pleasure hall area, where they kind of end up running into Big Mom, and then Chopper and Usopp get chased away with the Brachio tank, as they're going on, as Kinemon's forces continue on with, like, them kind of acting as a distraction, with the Brachio tank acting as a distraction. So that's going. They get their way around to the back, where they then join up. They reunite with the rest of the Scabbards, and then Izo and Nekomamushi are now there, along with Marco. Well, Marco's not there yet. He's going to show up later, but he dropped them off. I'll talk about Izo later. I think he's the third one I'll talk about technically in the series. But the third Scabbard. But what ends up happening is, so they get to the back of the building, the back of the mansion, the rear entrance to the mansion, and of course, so they're reunited there with the Izo and stuff, and then we have it that Kanjuro has shown up with his, they show up there, and Kanjuro had been there, and he fought against, well, he had his, like, certain beast pirates that were with him, and then he had, like, drawn up different warriors to taunt the Scabbards, and Kanjuro has his fight with Kiku, which I'll go into more detail when I do Kiku's fight, when I do the Kiku videos. But so, she defeats Kanjuro, they leave him lying on the floor, they believe that he is defeated, they believe that he is dead. And we have this somber moment that happens here because all the way up until like half hour ago, Kanjuro had been like one of Kinemon's best friends, because like all the Scabbards, as much as they bicker with each other, they are, siblings. They are brothers and sister when it comes to Kiku, and they're allies, they are best friends, they are like siblings type of a thing. They're all those things, they're comrades, all of this. And up until Kanjuro's reveal, they all saw Kanjuro as one of their allies, as one of them. And then this horrible reveal happens, and it's just like, no, he's been a traitor to us the entire time. And I don't know how you get past that. That's a very hard thing to get past, but they have a mission that they are on right now in regards to saving Momonosuke, defeating Kaido, and freeing Wano from Kaido's grasp. And so they're like, okay, but we have this moment where like Kinemon walks by Kanjuro, what they believe is Kanjuro's dead body, and Kinemon drops like a hat over the top of him. It's one of the straw hats that they had made, the Amagasa hats, that Tama had made them, and drops it on Kanjuro, and then they walk away. But up to that, they believe that Kanjuro was dead. That'll come back to bite him in the butt a little bit later. Although there is kind of a what if scenario of like, what if Kiku just like, or like one of the others just to be on the safe side, just like stab their sword through Kanjuro just a couple of more times, aiming for his heart, and then he's like, yeah, no, he's not a threat anymore. He is very much dead. But given the abuse that I'm going to talk about that Kinemon's going to go through in this video, that may not have been enough to take Kanjuro out, but it may have been at least enough to keep him down for longer. But we'll get back to that. So then they make their way into Kaido's castle, and they start working their way to the performance stage, and we get to the moment where they come through the back of the performance stage, right at where, up by where, Kaido is standing after he's just decapitated Orochi, and he's got king and queen on either side or so, and the Scabbards burst through, and like Momonosuke has made his declaration at this point in time. The Scabbards burst through, and they all rush and jump on Kaido, and this knocks him over the balcony into the ground, into like a hole in the ground, because the floor breaks with the force. And they land in the ground, and they just start dealing as much damage on him as possible. They're like stabbing and cutting and inflicting as much damage on Kaido as they can, given this time frame that they have. And they do manage to cause some wounds on him, mostly superficial, because they're not 100% bleeding, but it is like they are causing like little pricks of damage here and there. And what ends up happening is Kaido, he transforms into his dragon form. At this point in time, the alliance up top has like revealed themselves to the beast pirates and starts fighting against them and everything. the samurai and all the others fighting against Kaido's forces and Orochi's former forces and everything. And the Straw Hats are there, and everybody's fighting. And the Kid Pirates, the Heart Pirates show up a little bit later, but you get the idea. And they're all fighting up top. And then Kinemon and the others are down in the pit fighting fighting against Kaido. And then this leads to Kaido, he kind of taunts them, changes into his dragon form. They all end up like having to ride him up out of the hole, and then they burst through a hole in the ceiling that Kaido makes. And they end up on top of the Skull Dome. And by the way, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I love Kaido's design of his mansion inside of the giant Skull Dome. Inside of the Onigashima Dome. I don't like the guy overall and his tactics for like anything, but I like his design choices. I'll give him that much. And so they're now on top of the dome where the Mink tribe are waiting for them. And we have it where there's kind of like this intermittent battle where Jack fights against the Mink tribe, where they're all going Sulong and fighting against Jack. And Kinemon had prepared to fight Jack as like, you attacked Inuarashi, Nekomamushi before. I'm going to fight you now to avenge them, even though they're here now. And Inuarashi and Nekomamushi are just like, no, this is our fight. And then they fight Jack. Well, the Scabbards fight again, or not, well, the Scabbards, well, the other Minks, the Guardians and the Musketeers and stuff, fight against, like, Jack's forces, the Smile Fighters that are there, and then also there, one of the Numbers is up there as well, so they fight against those forces. And Kaido's just kind of off in the background, just kind of watching as this happens, as he's in giant dragon form, and Kinemon and the other Scabbards are kind of watching this as it happens, so that it's like, okay. And then, like, so Jack gets defeated enough by Inuarashi, Nekomamushi in their Sulong forms, and, the Musketeers and Guardians, defeated the other Smile users, which is probably pretty easy in all honesty. And they get all taken out, and then they head down, the other Minks head down, they all head back down into the dome. And then now it is up for the Scabbards versus Kaido. And what ends up happening is, Kaido tries scorching them with his Boro breath, but Kinemon is able to slice through this because he, he's Foxfire Kinemon. He can cut fire because reasons. Reasons. He also ends up cutting Kaido's mouth in the process, so that causes a little bit of damage to Kaido, but not a lot. And then they have it where, so there's several things that happen. So Raizo uses his scroll fruit to absorb Kaido's Boro breath and then send it back at him, which causes some damage. And then we have Kinemon, Ashura, Denjiro, and Inuarashi all use the Odin's two-sword style, where they use, Odin's fighting style with his two swords, and all of them have two swords that they're going to use in this attack, and they all use this and attack Kaido, and they strike his scar. That was the scar that, Odin gave him 20 years ago during the fight, during that battle, and so they attack that scar, and this actually causes quite a bit of pain for Kaido, because I think it kind of does make him bleed. It also kind of makes him have like a vision of like Odin a little bit. So there's that. So we get like, we kind of cut intermittently between like this fight up top and what's going on down in the on the main stage, the entertainment stage, and a bunch of the other areas throughout Kaido's mansion. So we're cutting around a lot during this stuff, but we keep cutting back to the fight up top. We stay with it for a little while, which is nice. But the next thing that happens is Kaido retaliates, and he uses one of his roars to make like the wind scythe that he can shoot out. Again, I do like Kaido's devil fruit. I would not say no to being a giant blue dragon. I would not say no to having that ability. Um, you're going to be a giant blue dragon. Keep going. I'm still listening. You're going to have fire breath. Yes. Wind scythe breath. Okay. You can fly. Kind of. I'm still listening. You just keep going. You have my attention. But what ends up happening is one of the wind scythes ends up actually slicing off Kiku's arm, unfortunately. And of course, all of the Scabbards are very, alarmed by this because it's like, okay, she's very injured. This is not good. But there's like this slight pause in the battle, and I think I kind of think Kaido, because Kaido is just kind of being entertained by this to a degree. He's just kind of watching them as they do this. And what happens is, so Izo bandages her arm, and then Kinemon uses his ability to light his sword on fire to then cauterize the wound. And Kaido is just kind of off to the side, and he just kind of like changes back into his human form, and he kind of praises them for their resolve in this. Because it's like, okay, your companion just lost her arm. That's not necessarily good in most cases. Most people in One Piece cannot regrow their own limbs, even if they are Logias, and they can create false limbs, and what, Kuzan can do with his ice powers. Or like, what Perospero does with making his candy arm. But it's like, a little bit of a different here. Kiku has no ability to grow a new arm. Devil fruit power or not, which she doesn't have one, neither does Kinemon or Denjiro or, Izo or Ashura or Inarashi and Nakamura. They don't have any either. But what ends up happening is, so Kaido kind of praises him. He's also like, he also for their like commitment to a death in regards to like, you're willing to fight me even to your death. Okay, whatever, I'll fight you. And as much as to a degree this is like coming from Kaido as praise, Kinemon is just like, he despises this idea. He's just like disgusted by it, and that Kaido has no honor, which give or take, Kaido's, I don't know where Kaido stands on honor. He just chopped off Orochi's head like half an hour ago, if that. So, where's honor in that regard? So they then continue the battle, and unfortunately, eventually the Scabbards end up getting overwhelmed by Kaido, and then they are all just like lying on the ground. Eventually, Big Mom shows up, and she's kind of just there talking with Kaido, and we get information. And then Kid, Killer, Zoro, Luffy, and Law arrive at the roof. And from there, we have it that, of course, Luffy goes over and he checks on Kinemon and the others, and Kinemon is very badly injured, and he's pleading with Luffy to please take Wano's fate onto his own shoulders, and please defeat Kaido, please save Wano. And like, Kinemon is like, he's very badly hurt. All of the Scabbards are very badly hurt at this point in time. And Kinemon is just crying in tears and everything, because like, as much as Kinemon didn't like pirates because of everything that he'd experienced with Kaido 20 years ago and everything that happened with Odin, he has seen very much firsthand that Luffy and Law, specifically Luffy, just from his perspective, just because he's seen Luffy do more, also Law chopped him up, so issue there. But he trusts Law now, and he trusts Luffy and Zoro and everything, and he just like, he is asking and pleading with Luffy for this, and Luffy is just like, of course I will help, type of a thing. And he's like, yes, and like, so it's like, so Kinemon is like learning that, like, again, like the whole thing of not all pirates are bad type of a thing. And Luffy tells Law to teleport the Scabbards to a safe place, which Law does begrudgingly, but it's like, he likes Kinemon anyway, so he's like, yeah, sure, fine, I'll do it anyway. I was gonna do it anyway, so don't boss me around. And they drop him Law drops them into the treasure room on the second floor. And then we have it that like a mysterious person shows up and tends to their wounds. Because they're all kind of like knocked out. Or very, very delusional from blood loss and pain. And we have this mysterious figure that shows up and tends to their wounds. This figure at the moment is kind of assumed to be Hiyori, simply because we know that she shows up later, later on during the fight, and ends up trying dealing with Orochi. So I'm going to assume that it is Hiyori that managed to make her way there and tend to their wounds. So a little bit later, we now have the Scabbards kind of recover, and they kind of wake up in the treasure room, and they're like, okay, it's like, but okay, so who tended to our wounds? It's just like, okay, it doesn't matter. We got to go, and we have to try to, save Momonosuke, go do something against Kaido, something to help. And then the door bursts open, and someone shows up, and that appears to be Odin. And all of the Scabbards, except Ashura, are just kind of like, and like Kinemon is just like, oh my god, like they believe that it's Odin, that it is Odin back from the dead, because he's like, oh yes, Lady Toki sent me into the future, right before my death. And it's just like, not how that works. When these chapters are happening of like the fake Odin showing up all over, it was like, it can't be Odin. It can't be Odin. It has to be something else. It has to be an illusion. And I don't know if anyone actually landed on, oh, it's a drawing by Kanjuro. But if someone did, it was like, you are 1,000% correct. It is a drawing by Kanjuro. It's not actually Odin. And what ends up happening is they are like, okay, here, Odin tries to get them to come with him, to follow him, and all of them are like, yes. But then it's Ashura Doji's just like, no, this is not Odin. We all saw Odin die. We know that this is not how Toki's power works. She explained it to you guys. This isn't the way her power works. Odin died. We know this. And Ashura was one of the ones who'd been in Wano for those 20 years between Odin's death and when Kinemon and such returned, were sent forward. And so he is well aware of the fact that Odin is very dead. And then you also have like Inuarashi and Nekomamushi who are here, but like they were off island by that point in time. So it's like he's like, it's not them. It's not Odin. And then it is revealed that it is so Kinemon tries to go forward, but Ashura pulls him back, punches him out of the way, and then attacks Odin, and this reveals that it is a drawing by Kanjuro. And then, of course, the Odin drawing then stabs Ashura and attacks the Scabbards as Kanjuro reveals himself that he that he is headed towards where Momonosuke is, so that he could, get Momonosuke before he dies of his own wounds. They then end up trying to fight the drawing, but Ashura jumps on top of the drawing, tackling it out of the room just before it explodes, sacrificing himself to save his comrades. And then, of course, this just enrages all the other ones. And they're all just, they're angry at Kinemon is angry at Kanjuro for mocking Odin, angry at him for the fact that Ashura is dead now, and they lead the other Scabbards to try to find where Momonosuke is, so they can protect him. Immediately they run into Jack. Inuarashi steps up and is just like, I'll take care of Jack. This is fine. You guys keep going. They head off. I've already gone over what happens in that fight in the Inuarashi video that I did. One of the two videos I did. Did I do Inuarashi and Neko each in one video, or did I don't remember. But then we have it that the Scabbards end up finding Orochi and Fukurokuju. And they're like, to be fair, I don't remember if they saw that Orochi had been decapitated already by Odin, but whatever. Or by Odin. That would have been cathartic. By Kaido. But what ends up happening is, Orochi changes into his Yamato no Orochi form and is trying to attack them. And the Scabbards are just like, yeah, no, we don't have time for this. And they all rush forward and they all decapitate him one more time. With the synchronized strikes chopping off. So he has 8 to start with. Kaido chopped off 1. And then we know Hiyori's going to chop off 1, so that was like 6 of them got chopped off. So there's still 1 left, and that'll be the one that Hiyori / Denjiro end up getting rid of in this regard. Although if one of them had just stabbed him in the heart, this would be done with. But that's not how this works, and I still like the idea that we get like Hiyori confronting Orochi, which I'm still going to talk about way in depth when I do the Hiyori videos. So they chop off a bunch of Orochi's heads, and then they're like, okay, we kind of have to split up. So I know that Neko ends up going off, and Izo stops and fights someone. Because I know that it is Kinemon and Kiku that are the ones that end up arriving and getting to the attic area where Momonosuke and Shinobu are at this point in time, because I believe at this point in time Yamato... What was Yamato doing? Was Yamato acting as a diversion at this point in time, I think, and trying to have them hide in the attic? Have Momonosuke and Shinobu hide in the attic. So what ends up happening is Kinemon and Kiku find them, and Kinemon is, of course, relieved to see that Momonosuke is alive and everything. And they're like, okay, well, they also want to go and like finish off Kanjuro, because like Kinemon's like, okay, this is partially my responsibility. And then Kiko's like, I should have finished him off anyway, so I'm coming to help with finishing him off. So they're all the Scabbards are like splitting off into different groups. They find where Momonosuke and Shinobu are in the crawl space, and they end up then having to. They are confronted by Kanjuro, but he is, of course, shrouds himself in another Odin disguise, which is just like this another traumatic scene that then happens, because you have Momonosuke and Shinobu who don't know that it's Kanjuro trying to pull this trick, and Momonosuke is seeing his father, who he thought was dead, and of course Shinobu is seeing her lord. And so it's like this other thing, which I'll talk more about when I discuss them for like their more reactions to the scene. But Kinemon is having to like hold Momonosuke back, and Kiku is trying to hold Shinobu back from rushing to the fake Odin. And Kiku, of course, races over and attacks him, revealing that it is just another drawing by Kanjuro. And she's trying to fight him, and I'll go into this more when I do Kiku's video, but she tries to fight him, but he ends up stabbing her. And then we have the battle between Kanjuro and Kinemon. And of course, I talked about this in the Kanjuro video already, but in regards to Kinemon, this is, of course, Kanjuro sheds his disguise, so he can fight Kinemon. And it is this, from Kanjuro's perspective, it is just like this final climax in the story of like him fighting against his onstage best friend and everything. And for Kinemon, it is, he is fighting against who was his, one of his former best friends, his ally, his comrade, his brother in arms, and all of this. But it's like, you betrayed us. You've been betraying us ever since you first showed up, ever since, Lord Odin and us first found you in those, when you were stealing the hair off of corpses, which is still like a very giant red flag there. Don't do that. Don't do that. And what ends up happening is, so Kinemon then ends up fighting against Kanjuro, and he does end up, striking him down. And so that is technically what ends up killing Kanjuro in the end, but we know that he's not entirely dead because he's still got to make the Kanzenbo later. But at this point in time, so they've dealt with Kanjuro. He falls to the ground, finishing on that. And then this is when Kaido arrives. He's already knocked Luffy off the top of the building, off the top of the Skull Dome. Yamato is not there quite yet for him to fight, because this is like right after that, or so. And what ends up happening is he shows up to, to try to kill Momonosuke, and Kinemon tells Shinobu to take Momonosuke and flee. Kiku is still injured on the ground, so she's kind of not able to do anything at the moment. And Kinemon is like, I'm gonna stand up to Kaido, which is like, okay. And that doesn't go well. Kaido picks up his Kanabo and just like shatters through Kinemon's swords, which just shatter with ease. And then he just smashes Kinemon's head with immense force, which is just like, oh god, he like accordions him. And Kinemon is just very heavily injured this. And he's still conscious, and he like stabs Kaido's leg with like one of the broken swords and everything. What little more time he could for like, to allow, Shinobu and Momonosuke time to escape. So he does that. Kaido just like knocks him away and everything, picks up the other part of the broken katana and just like stabs Kinemon in the back, leaving him lying motionless on the ground. And so then we kind of cut away for a little while, because like I believe this lines up for when Kaido goes and fights Yamato on top of the dome, and then Yamato is able to keep Kaido occupied for long enough for then like Luffy and such to recover, just for lining things up. Well, he eats down on the shore, and then they get back up top. But we don't know what's going on with Kinemon for a while, and in extension, we don't know what's going on with Kiku for a while at that point in time either. So what ends up happening is, the next time we see anything of Kinemon, it is his legs running around, and they are found by Usopp and Nami's group. And they come across his legs that are now just running around, and it's like they're running around, and because of course there's the whole thing of, because still discussing, Kinemon knows how to fart and talk. Usopp manages to grab the legs, signs that they're friends, recognizes them, and then has Kinemon's legs lead him and Hamlet, that's now on their side, lead them to the crawl space where Kinemon and Kiku are. So that's what they're trying to, that's where they're trying to get. Usopp draws the symbol of the rebellion on him to help him realize that they're allies. So they get to the crawl space, and so Usopp and Hamlet show up. Also, what ends up happening is they show up in the crawl space where Kinemon and Kiku are. And Izo ends up showing up as well, because Izo shows up and he ends up fighting against the beast pirates that are there, because they've shown up there because it's like, oh, well, we'll take out we'll take out these two Scabbards. And Izo being there allows Usopp to then get Kinemon and Kiku. But we have the moment where, they get to the crawl space and Kinemon is pleading with Usopp to leave him behind and just take Kiku. Well, Kiku pleads for the opposite, which then leads to what I think is a really good moment for Usopp, where he's just like, I'm refusing to do either of those things. I'm refusing to leave either of you here to die when I can do something to try to protect you. And he says that it's ridiculous to try to sacrifice yourself in this regard, because it's like, I can take both of you. It's ridiculous to have the sacrificial mentality in this regard. That it is honorable, yes, if you cannot to fight until your last breath, but this is different. This is you're lying on the ground type of a thing, and it's just like, just get, I will help you get out of there. So that's what happens there, which they're like, okay, yeah, okay, yeah. And Usopp gets them. He gets them onto the back of Hamlet, and that's when Izo shows up and he fights against the beast pirates. Well, Kinemon, Usopp and Hamlet are able to get Kinemon and Kiku to safety. It's also the last time that Kiku and Izo will ever see each other, because Izo is going to die here, unfortunately. But they get there, they get out, and they're rushing through the castle. The castle's on fire, so they're having to deal with that. They end up getting swept up in the water when Raizo unleashes it, but their manage is, they're able to keep Kiku and Kinemon safe. And then they get back to the main stage, to the main hall, where of course Chopper is, and he's treating everybody. Him and Miyagi and Tristan and such are all treating everybody. And Usopp gets there, and he brings Kinemon and Kiku over to Chopper, who is just like, oh my god. But like they're also there when everything is revealed that like Luffy defeated Kaido and everything during this time frame. So it's like, Luffy won, Kaido is defeated, so we have that all finished up. Nekomamushi is the one that kind of makes this announcement to them, seeing that Kaido has been defeated and that Big Mom is defeated and everything, and that Onigashima has been landed safely on the ground thanks to Lord Momonosuke. So they have all of that. Then we cut to probably not even a half hour later. Again, this battle takes place over the course of like a good chunk of the night, but like they're like when the Scabbards and Momonosuke, which is the part I'm going to talk about next, when they arrive back at the Flower Capital and reveal themselves and everything, and reveal that Kaido has been defeated and everything, it's not daylight yet. It's not like sunrise. It's not dawn yet. It's still pretty, dark outside. So the battle does not take place over the course of like 8 hours or whatever during the night, but it does take place over a good chunk of the night. Because like everybody in the Flower Capital is just partying very hard at this point in time. So what ends up happening is then it's time for this big reveal from Momonosuke to now reveal himself to the people of Wano and declare himself as Shogun. So we have this great scene that is just like the return of Momonosuke. And we have all the Scabbards that survived that are there, along with Shinobu, and Hiyori is there as well. And we have them there, and Kinemon has used his powers to put them all into like appropriate, with the Kozuki clan emblem on the back of it and everything, and the moons and everything. Those types of robes for them to wear for this occasion, because it's like they've been fighting for several hours, so this at least makes them look a little bit more presentable. And it gets Momonosuke clothes at that point in time, because he needs new ones, because now he's very big and all grown up. And they all, and they have the great entrance, which I'll go into in more detail when I get to, Momonosuke's videos on this. But will get mentioned in the other Scabbards videos, of course. And they show up, and they're all ready, and they are the 9 shadows will appear at the end of 20 years and everything, and that's the case that happens. And they make their entrance, and Momonosuke is like looking at Kinemon like, what am I supposed to do? And Kinemon's just like, just go for it. Just like, fake it till you make it type of a thing was, I think, one of the original translations. It's just like, do your best type of a thing. Just lie a little bit. And Kinemon, or Momonosuke does, but like they're all rejoicing, and all of the citizens are rejoicing now, because like Kaido and the Beast Pirates and Orochi have all been defeated, and they're all just joyful and ecstatic and everything at this point in time. And they make their way towards the castle, and Momonosuke and Hiyori are reunited, which I'll go over more in their videos. And then we cut to about a week after the raid, and we cut to the Ringo region, where Kinemon and Kawamatsu are, and they are at the graveyard there, and they have put Ashura's sword and Izo's guns. They are in like the little shrine that is there, and they are discussing what they are going to do. And they have decided that they are going to build new shrines to honor Odin and Toki, obviously, but also to honor Izo and Ashura Doji, along with all of the others who died during the raid. Who fought and died during the raid from the samurais side. And, you know, so they can honor all of them properly. And of course, because like Odin and Toki have not been able to properly been honored for the past 20 years and everything, so it's like they're going to work on building shrines for them as well. And of course, Marco is there, and he's talking with like Kinemon and such as well. And, you know, Kinemon does the very honorable thing of asking him, it's like, are you okay with Izo being buried in Ringo? And Marco's like, of course it's fine. You know, this is buried in the country of his birth. I think Izo would like that and everything. And, you know, we have the moment from Marco, which is just very hard hitting because he's like, you know, once again, I'm left alive while one comrade dies because he already lost Whitebeard and Ace, and now Izo, and he lost other ones that died during the Marineford, you know, during Battle of Marineford, and then of course during the Payback War, and so, so you know, that's just sad from Marco's perspective, and Kinemon understands it. You know, they know the feeling because they've lost Odin and they've lost Toki, and now they've lost, you know, Ashura and Kalmat and Izo and everything. So they know what that feels like. And, you know, they send him off. They send Marco off. And then we have, like, the second little fire festival that's going on. And during this little fire festival that's in honor of celebrating that they defeated, you know, Kaido and Orochi and everything, Kinemon celebrates it by going back to Kuri, where he is finally reunited with Suru. And they are able to just relax and be together at this point in time after 20 years from her perspective, after, you know, however many months from his perspective. And probably a lot of talking and also just a lot of like hugging each other and just, you know, all of that as well. Because like, and I'll go over this with Suru's video a little bit more, but it is this thing where it's like Suru stayed loyal to Kinemon during that whole time frame, and she stayed loyal to the Kozuki family as well, because it's like those are the ones that she always supported, that she had the specific tie to because of Kinemon, and that she believed in, and she held that belief and she kept that belief alive, even through all of those dark times of those 20 years. And as I said, I'll go more into that when I talk about her in her own video next time. But what ends up happening is, of course, Kinemon then returns to the castle after he is informed of what happened with the Scabbards and Yamato and Momonosuke fighting against Ryukoku, against Armaki. And, you know, so Kinemon's like, I'm sorry, I wasn't here to be able to help with that. And she's like, it's okay, we're okay. Raizo and Shinobu got a lot of the moisture drained out of their bodies, but they're okay. We'll get them better again. And Kinemon he ends up talking with Nekomamushi at this point in time, and like they asked how Suru is, and he's like, oh, she's just as beautiful as ever, even though she has like the burn mark on her face and everything from standing up to hold him and everything. He's like, she's just as beautiful as ever and everything. And Neko is just like, yeah, stop bragging about your love life, which is just funny. So it's like they don't blame him. It's just like, you have missed your wife for so long, and we know how much you love Suru, so just go, type of a thing. And we also know that there's a discussion of Suru moving back to the castle, back to the flower capital as well, because she is, Kinemon's wife. She can then be with Kinemon. Now there's like a 20-year age gap between them, but given the circumstances, I don't see that as a problem in this regard. Because Suru is like 55 and Kinemon is 36. So there's 19-year age gap there, given the circumstances, I think. And what ends up happening is, it's like Sudu is safe and sound. Okabore town, yes, it was burned to the ground, but the citizens survived and everything, and she's just as beautiful after, as ever after, even after all these years. So they're very happy about that. Then we get to some days later, and it is time for the Straw Hats and such to depart from Wano. And of course, Kinemon and Momonosuke are both very upset with the fact that like Luffy and the others did not say goodbye to them before they left the palace. They say goodbye to everybody else, but they're very upset that like Luffy and the others didn't say goodbye to them specifically because they've known them for so long. So they're all annoyed and they're rushing out to the port, and they have Yamato with them and everything. And so they're getting to the port, and we have the great scene, and I'll go into this more with Momonosuke, but it's the scene where it's like Momonosuke like leaps on Luffy and like tries to like pin him to the ground, and you think Momonosuke is going to be really angry, but then he just starts crying because it's like, as much as he is now physically 28 years old, he is still 8 years old mentally, which is kind of a hard thing to deal with. So you have that. But what ends up happening is, of course, like they were all very annoyed that like Luffy and the others left without saying goodbye, which I can understand entirely. So they get to the coast, and Momonosuke starts kind of yelling at Luffy, and Luffy and the others are then like, yeah, no, don't worry about that. It's okay. Look, we made you this giant flag for you to then be able to put over, to hang here in Wano to show that you are part of Luffy's territory and that you are under Luffy's protection as, like a new Yonko and everything. And so they do that and everything, and they are saying goodbye, and they tell, Kinemon and Momo and Yamato, there's like, if any of you would ever wish to become pirates and wish to join us again, just, tell us and we'll come and get you. Although as long as they agree to, not be weaklings at that point in time, which is more directed at Momonosuke at this point in time. But Luffy sees that Momonosuke is definitely getting better, but he also understands that Momonosuke is still mentally 8 years old, in a 28-year-old body. So from there, they are, they say goodbye to the Straw Hats. They head off. They head back to the castle. Head back to the capital, and they do end up putting up the flag. And then we cut into the little bit that goes on with Egghead and the little bit that goes on with Yamato's cover story. So in the Egghead bit, while they're doing the big Vegapunk is doing his big transmission all over the world, the Scabbards and Momonosuke had managed to find some different Den Mushi within the castle of Wano, and they found one of these ones that had belonged to Orochi, for him to probably be able to use to communicate with like Cypher Pole, Zero or whatever. But they found one, and they're sitting and listening to it while while they're eating. It's like they don't quite understand everything that's going on with the message, but they're understanding that it is very important. And so they're like, oh, well, that's very interesting there. It's just like, well, the sea level's raised. That's not good. But what about Pluton? Don't talk about Pluton. And so it's just like they're just like all listening in on this. And then we get to Yamato's cover story. So the last bit that we have here for Kinemon, at least thus far, is in Yamato's cover story. We have it that, of course, kind of one of the things that kicks off this is, of course, Yamato wants to travel around Wano and see all the stuff that Oden had seen, and see how the country is recovering and everything. So Kinemon also ends up giving Yamato kind of gives Yamato money in exchange for trying to do this favor for him. And the favor is, take this sword that once belonged to Yasuie and take it to the Enma Shrine in the Hakumai region, so that way it can be laid to rest as a representation of Yasuie being laid to rest as part of the Wano tradition. And of course, Yamato is very much like, yes, I will do this. And Yamato is still currently carrying out that mission at the moment, is now in the process of trying to get the sword back from who's group, probably, given what we've seen in the recent chapters. So we'll see what happens there. I don't know when we're going to see Kinemon again in the story. I don't expect us to cut around to Wano again for a little while, at least, beyond what we see in the cover story, but that's not focusing on Kinemon, that's focusing on Yamato's little journey right now. But we'll see what happens. Again, I don't know when we'll see Kinemon again. It might be sometime after the Elbath arc. It depends on how many times during the Elbath arc that we cut out of Elbath to go and see what's going on in other places around the world. I mean, obviously, I want to see Kinemon again, and by extension, Momonosuke and Yamato, and see them show up again at, like, the final battle type of a thing. Maybe not after they've, utilized, maybe not after they've managed to utilize Pluton, because that would involve, knocking down the walls of Wano and flooding and all of that stuff, and causing a lot of problems for the citizens of Wano. But I do expect us to see them again. Having Momonosuke and Kinemon there when they finally get to Laugh Tale would be kind of, poetic, with the fact that Odin was there when Roger got to Laugh Tale. And Odin was able to read the poneglyphs then, but Momonosuke is currently being taught by Sukiyake how to read the poneglyphs. But, we'll see what happens with that. The puppy is snoring in the background. I don't know if you can hear that. But so we get a lot of that. So we'll see what happens with Kinemon showing back up again. By extension, Momonosuke, Yamato, other Scabbards, Hiyori. Any of the Wano cast showing back up again. Not sure when that'll be. We'll see. But that's what I have for this one. As I said, the next one for this one is just going to be one little, single episode, single video about Tsuru, because I really like Tsuru. I think he's great. I mean, I like both Tsurus. I like the Marine Tsuru, and then I like the Wano Tsuru. I like both of them a lot. They're both awesome. And something just tells me they would probably get along really well. Vice Admiral Tsuru is used to having to put Garp and Sengoku in their place. Otsuru from Wano is used to having to put Kinemon and the other Scabbards in their place. So they both know what they're doing. They're both used to having to deal with idiot, childish men. So we'll see what happens. We'll get to Tsuru, and then after Tsuru, I will be moving on to the Denjiro videos. So that's what I have for this. I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye!